Welcome to another episode of Living the Dream. I'm your host and moderator. My name is Gregory Tucker, and what we do on the channel is have discussions with small business experts on a variety of topics. Our guests include a mix of small to mid-sized business owners and entrepreneurs sharing their story of that dream or vision or how they converted it into a reality. It's not an infomercial. The goal is to provide insight, inspiration, influence, and information to those wishing to embark upon this often celebrated but misunderstood journey of an entrepreneur. Now, if this is your first time here on the channel, I ask that you subscribe and share. Also explore some of our other content. Remember to hit that notification bell to stay up with our new post. Now, thank you, and I hope you are living your dream. This episode features a man who broke all the rules at an early age of being a single talent identity by showing mastery in visual arts, music, design, poetry, just to name a few. A real modern day Renaissance man. Reginald Harmon. Enjoy the show. Living the dream. Today, as mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about Renaissance and Black history. And today's guest is an authority on both. Mr. Renaissance man himself, Mr. Reginald Harmon.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. As always, tell us about yourself.
Well, I could say that I was born in Waterloo, Iowa. My father was in medical school there at the time. And shortly thereafter, we moved to Lebanon, Ohio with my grandmother while my father was trying to get established here in the area. Shortly thereafter, we moved to Dayton, Ohio. I think I might have been in preschool, 3 or 4 years old. Shortly thereafter, I began my elementary training in Dayton, Ohio at Westwood Elementary. And grew up in Dayton, and it was just an amazing area to be in at that time. That school was integrated. There were a lot of white children in the class, as well as a few blacks that were in the neighborhood at that time. And as I got older and developed in years, surely and gradually, all the whites had began to move out of the neighborhood. And then the school shortly thereafter became pretty much predominantly white elementary school, and it was a lot going on through those years. You know, the civil rights movement and the integration was taking place, and it was just an amazing time to grow up and to experience. It was just a surge of energy that was affecting us all. Little did we know the struggle for education, the struggle for rights, the struggle for identity, and you had to fight, not physically, but mentally and spiritually to survive. And it was so important for our parents to establish some identity in their children and the importance of them understanding who they were, because they knew that they were going to be confronted as they grew. There was a lot of industry here at that time, even though I was young, but the jobs were plentiful. And I think that kind of affected the community in a very, quite a few different ways.
Oh, you know. Okay. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
How did you find yourself involved in the arts?
Well, I tell you, it was a lot of sacrifices that were made on the weekends. the big thing was cartoons played all day Saturday. Just like it's always something to try to occupy your time, and TV was even developing at that time. So cartoons was real big. Walt Disney, the Disney World thing, those characters were being developed at that time, and they were being shown all day Saturday. My mother sit back and said, look, you're not going to sit here and watch cartoons all day Saturday. And she made sure, by sacrificing, she made sure that I got out. She saw me drawing and doodling and everything else with my little pencils and coloring, which was very, I would say, promoted in the elementary school levels. At that time, the arts was promoted as well as music. And she said, no, you're going to get out of here on the weekends and develop this talent that I'm detecting that you have, and sent me to the Dayton Art Institute to develop my skills. And as I attended classes there in the Art Institute, I realized that I was just one of the few blacks that was in the class. And I'm talking about, it was just one of those situations again, dealing with the relationship between the different nationalities and you being in a minority. The good thing about it was I had some identity, kind of like who I was, and I was feeling pretty good about myself because I felt that I had talent. And you know, a lot of times someone who is unique and different and the talent is displayed, whatever it is, it kind of gives you a sense of pride and feeling good about yourself because you could do something that some of the others cannot do. I don't care what it is. You might have a special innate talent for something, and you feel good about it once you realize that everybody can't do it. So by me attending these art classes and developing my skills, it was just put before me, here, see what you could do with this drawing, or see what you could do with this chalk, or this clay, or this jewelry making. And it's just like, it just began to open up so many ways of expressing myself. So I say to the viewing audience, it's imperative that we provide our children with as many outlets of expression that we possibly can, so they might discover the hidden treasures they have within their souls and spirit, that they might be able to latch on to them at a very, very young age and explore it. Whether they continue to develop that talent or not, they have to be exposed to it, because only then will you know. Only then will it unlock an opportunity for them to develop something that may be gifted to them.
Okay. Now, just to tie in certain things that you had said, and that is, during that period, as far as of growing up, you were challenged. We were challenged with more evident racism challenges right there. And at the same time, art was a way of expressing yourself. And at the same time, it presented its own set of challenges as well, because at any time during your journey, was there any apprehensions, or was there any predominant challenge or an obstacle, stating like materials or having access far as to what some of your counterparts had access to?
The very first one that I could say that I was confronted with was, after being allowed to go to the class and to take all these wonderful opportunities, take advantage of these opportunities, there came a time where they called it break time. And when that break time came around, it was everybody could go out to the vending machines. And in the vending machines, it had all the candies and cookies and soft drinks and everything you had. Well, my classes were paid for, but I didn't have a budget when I got there. I didn't have any coins in my pocket. And I'm going to tell you, it was a heck of an experience, because when everybody could go to that slot machine or that vending machine and put coins in there and take a pick of what they want, and you don't have anything, and all you could think of is going to the water fountain and just getting some water to quench your thirst. I had a very, very enlightening experience. It was a young Caucasian male. His name was Eddie. He was just the coolest young guy. He befriended me, and he was the coolest guy. And every time it came to lunchtime, Eddie would come to me, and he was a character. He would say, hey, Reggie, hey, you want something, man? You want something? And I'm full of pride. I'm full of pride. I'm just saying, yeah, man, but that's okay. I'll be all right. And he, no, man, come on. And then he pulled this little wad out his pocket. I mean, he had dollar bills. I'm talking about a bunch of them in his pocket. And we're talking about, we were young. I'm talking about, we had to be 8 or 9 years old. And he pulled a pocket of money out, boy. And he said, man, come on. And he's taking me over to the machine. He said, get what you want. And I think I had to swallow my pride. And I said, okay, man. Okay, if you insist. And I would take my pick. And I would not be greedy. I would just get me some chips or some cookies and something to drink, and I'd just be satisfied. And we would go back and we would just talk. And every Saturday, it was just like he would say, man, come on. And I think he was just outwardly just befriending me and wanted to be my friend. And not only that, he was amazed at the talent that I had. And I say this anytime somebody asks, if I knew where that young man was now, I would embrace him and thank him for being a friend and being concerned in terms of who I was, and being able to participate in that little but major part of my day when I went to those classes, and help me with being able to take a break with them and have those benefits of the snacks, and that's so important. And it makes me think of how our school system is set up now, where a lot of the kids aren't able to have breakfast and lunch, and the government is talking about cutting all these programs out, and how it's going to affect the ability for kids to adapt and learn and feel good about themselves, so they could do something as simple as have a meal to nourish their bodies so that they can learn, so they could feel good about it, instead of their stomachs growling all during the day, not being able to go to lunch, not being able to have lunch, and then expecting them to learn. Everything kind of has to work in harmony. We have to figure out how to solve these problems. Well, eating is one problem. Being able to have some basic, let's say, attire is important as well, because see, these kids are getting beat down in classes emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically, because they can't adorn themselves with these expensive gym shoes, these designer clothes and hats, etc. We put too much emphasis on this stuff, and it's a shame that our parents are not teaching our children some of the major things that are going to affect us the rest of our lives. And if we don't get a grip on it, it could be the devastation of success and failure in terms of the choices that they make as they develop and grow.
Yeah. That's amazing that you bring up that point, because small things, I once heard, small things make big things happen.
That's right.
So it's not what's always on top, it's what's underneath that really is the power. It's like the roots of a tree.
That's right.
Now, with that being said, with our young people. Did you have a mentor?
Well, thank goodness I had an example of my father and my mother. Those two in the home guiding me had a lot to do with the course that I took. And the neighborhood, the parents of the children that I hung out with and kicked it with, you might say, they always looked out for us. It was just like when I went to their house, it was yeah, well, come on in and, you know, sit down. If so-and-so, if he can't leave right now because he's having a sandwich or something, do you want one? And the neighborhood, it was just like the village concept that was alive and well. And at that time, there were, you might say, those were our mentors, and those were the ones that we looked up to. And then there were some older gentlemen, they weren't gentlemen, I would say they were teenagers that we looked up to that were doing different things. You know, they were striving to be excellent in what they were doing. And we just kind of looked up to them, and they always took time to speak to us and guide us. And if I could say anything, that was more of the mentoring type of thing that was going on. It was difficult to find that anywhere else, because in our institution, most of our teachers were not of our heritage. And it was just one of those things. So you had to just kind of depend and understand what was going on. And a lot of us got lost in that because a lot of us didn't have that. At that time, they were starting to get in trouble. As I got older, by the time I got into high school, leaving grade school, going into high school, a lot of us started feeling that, hey, you know, we could make our own way, because at that time, there was a lot of drugs coming into the neighborhood, a lot of unacceptable behavior, you know, with the drugs. Was coming into the neighborhood, you know. A lot of movies were being made about that, and people started to idolize these characters that came out of these movies. And I think that's when all that stuff started to kind of develop, because it's what you see that you want to be, and it starts to consume you. The next thing you know, you don't want to be this over here anymore. You want to be something more. And that something more is kind of like a very small percentage of reality that we want to make it the must have.
Okay.
You know.
So that's and you bring up a pretty interesting point, because during that period, like the 60s and 70s, 70s a little bit more so, and that's when we began to have images as far as coming on to our screen, and those were depictions. They were depicting us as far as that, hey, if you're going to be successful as far as in the hood, these are some of the successful the imagery.
Superfly and all them characters.
Now, it's not to dog them, because at the same time, it was
the way of life at that time.
It was a way of life, and it was also as far as the creativity. Because
survival.
It was you know, you didn't have Hollywood. I just looked at something on Netflix that they had, and that is They Gotta Have Us. That's on there.
That's right.
And one of the things that they were that they were really breaking down, and that was during that era, that in order for movies to be made by black people, African Americans, then a lot of times, you know, they were doing what you know, independents are now catching on to, and that is forewalling, or else they had to scrape by in order to put a story together. And at the same time, in order to pull that audience in, because if you came with something a little too intellectual, and this is not to slam anybody, but too intellectual, then you may not have that audience.
Oh no, they
so you
guarantee
something that resonate.
Guarantee you wouldn't have that audience, because they wasn't having it. You know, so you had to be at least creative enough to try to get your point across without interfering with the quote industry.
Yes.
You know, so standards, you might say, or what they wanted to govern in terms of what was going to be shown and wasn't going to be shown. And we were fighting a lot of stereotypes and so many things. And they were trying to paint an image and a picture that we kind of have made it a part of our menu, which kind of have led us to who we are today, because we have been consuming too much of this appetite of our image. And there was a friend of mine has put together a picture of what it was like in the past, and then he shows a picture of what it is today in comparison to men back then and men now, and women back in this period and the way they look now. And the images are startling, and they would drastically affect you. You say, I could not believe that image of us then has changed so drastically of where we are now. Because if you look at them, you say, well, hey, where is the pride and where is the respect? You know, so if one controls your image of who you think you are and put you on a path for you to believe that, then where it's just like, where is your treatment to counter that? You know, it's just like a real bad cold or this thing that they got going on now. Well, how do you combat this virus out here? And is it intentional, or is it something that we could get control of? Well, you know, you don't know. But you can bet one thing for sure. If you don't do something about it, it's going to destroy you. You better get a handle on it one way or the other.
Right. And that is very, very interesting. Now, part of your art, and that's when we talk about imagery, and that is when you're doing your artwork, you chose certain individuals.
Absolutely.
As far as in order to bring into your art. Let's start out with this particular picture right here. I'm going to bring this picture up here and tell us what was one of the things that was the catalyst as far as for this particular picture here.
Well, basically, Martin Luther King was one of those leaders that sacrificed his life, you know, so that we can see and realize some of the better things that this life had to offer. And it was just like, look, I can't deal with it, even though I'm from a privileged family. Both of his parents were upperly mobile. They were established. He didn't have to be out there fighting the struggle, but he went to the trenches. He went into the slums, and he took on issues that were major in terms of our well-being and our growth and our possibilities. And he sacrificed his life for it. He didn't have to do that. John Lewis is another one, was among him. And Malcolm X is another, and it goes on and on and on. You know, Medgar Evers was another. And Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and Angela Davis and Ida B. Wells and Rosa Parks. And it goes on and on. These people have sacrificed. They have sacrificed their lives, their families, so that we might have the opportunity. And with that right there, I just kind of capture in that collage the March on Washington, him being arrested, and the speech, you know, the I Have a Dream speech, and just those snapshots of his life kind of can capsulize his life in a degree. But, you know, more information is coming out. Say, well, you know, well, he was assassinated, he was shot. Well, it depends on how much of that information you got. And there's more information that has come out and say, look, yeah, he was shot, but when he got to the hospital, he was still alive. And, well, they supposed to make you well at the hospital, but it come to find out, he died from suffocation. So that means that something happened at the hospital, you know, that needs to be accounted for. But, well, it's not going to bring him back, but that's just want to let you know that everything we hear and everything that we experience, we got to investigate it. We got to seek it out. We got to seek the truth out by any means necessary.
All right. So, with a lot of your artwork, would you say that when you're capturing these images, you're just kind of really taking like a snapshot? And it's interesting that you bring up as far as imagery, because I recently, several years ago, I lost one of my dear friends. He was a gentleman. He was an original Tuskegee Airman. And one of the things I had an opportunity of, and he shared with me, and that was a film that he had made, a Super 16 film. And it had the audio in there. And he was from Chicago. So they called that piece the Chicagoans. And I was amazed because I saw a young Cab Calloway in there. And, you know, seeing all those beautiful people, as far as at that ball there, that really instilled a great sense of pride. And as I got to know him and he shared more and more of the history with me, that we are privy to a certain amount of history, so far as certain individuals we know about. But then there's a lot of other individuals that you may not know their name, far as on a world or on a global front or on a national front. But far as in that area, if you mention that person, say in Robinson, Chicago, then they would know, hey, I remember who was the fire chief, you know, who was the first fire chief out there.
That's right.
And that's one of the things, as far as this program was kind of conceived from that thought, and that is that really there's a lot of stories out there. We have a very rich culture, and there's a lot of stories out there that are not necessarily being told because, again, with the media, if you don't control it, then you are given...
you're subjected to it.
Exactly.
Right.
So we're going to be looking at another one of your pieces right here. And since we kind of talked about Cab Calloway, we can't be reminiscent or without bringing up the man, and that is the Duke.
Yeah. Sir Duke.
All right.
And a lot of them talk about Duke Ellington. He broke a lot of barriers when he was coming up with his music, but he was very gifted and talented. At the same time, Duke Ellington, like several of the other musicians at that time, played for a lot of the dominant markets in terms of, you might say, white parties and celebrations and stuff, and he was phenomenal and most gifted. Now, one of the writers for Duke Ellington was actually did some things here in Dayton, Ohio. Billy Strayhorn, and then you have Ella Fitzgerald. He gave a lot of opportunity to some of these vocalists, females, Billie Holiday, you name them. What's her name? Betsy Smith and Etta James. A lot of them. Duke Ellington touched so many musicians and vocalists. He was a brilliant writer and a composer. And we just try to capture, I try to capture history, these snapshots of history that we can feel good about. Now, there's a situation where I'm working with a partner as a RAM Project Ministries and myself with its Infinite Concepts LLC. We were bringing this film to Dayton down at the Neon, and at Calvary Baptist Church here in Dayton on the what is that, the 30th of April and the 2nd of May, or 2 shows. And what this movie is about is a writer named Chad Lawson Cooper, and they had this play on Broadway for 2 years. Then they turned it into a movie, and now they're taking the movie and premiering it all over the country. I had the pleasure of meeting him and his cast of actors and actresses. They did a phenomenal job. We went to Atlanta, Georgia, my wife and I, and participated in the premiere. We're bringing this play to Dayton down at the Neon. And the thing about this play, it is so timely because they're in Congress right now. They're trying to pass the bill dealing with this No Lynching Act, which has come before Congress 200 times. And it looks like it's before them one more time, and it may pass this year because it's so pressing. The tensions are so high. Racial tensions and all the discrimination stuff is being heightened due to our present president. And it looks like there may be some traction made on that bill being passed. It's just a lot going on. And I think if anybody that's in the local area can take the time out to come down and be a part of that red carpet showing that we're going to have at the Neon, it'd be excellent. If not at the Neon, at Calvary, is just one of the local churches that have embraced this opportunity to interact with the community and to raise the consciousness in terms of what's going on right now, presently, on the political scene here in America, and that's affecting them drastically right now in their own homes as they live today, because meals are being cut out for the children at school. General government assistance is being cut off. There's not enough jobs that are really set forth or training for these jobs that people could get in them and feel good about them. And it's just, we got some issues that we have to address. We really do. And it's going to take the village to do it, and we're going to have the participation of some of these hardheads and some of these stubborn attitudes and positions on I don't need an education, I don't need to work, I could go out here and hustle on the street. Well, these prisons and these other institutions are being filled up to capacity with some of these members of those groups that believe that they don't have to do it one way or the other. We have to make a change. We have to be an example to these youth. We have to. It's imperative. And now our generation, to a large degree, has kind of fallen down because we have not taken the responsibility to know that you just can't give your children things and think that's going to make it better because you didn't have something. I don't know if that makes sense, but for those who are listening who have done that, they may see the raft of what they didn't do correctly, because look where we are.
That's interesting that you bring that point up also, because that's a whole different show that we'll probably be bringing up, and that is about as far as legacy. We'll probably title that Legacy. But that is something that you bring up that I've been reading, and I've been seeing articles where a lot of extremely wealthy people are not leaving their children anything due to the simple fact is they consider it as being a curse. Because if a child isn't willing to work or doesn't build up that work ethic, then they're somewhat doomed. Because right now we live in a very, I would say, a good moment in time, because access as far as to several resources, and if you have creativity, then you can make something happen. But at the same time, if you are waiting for it to be given to you and you still don't go out and chisel away and make your own, what is it? The old saying is, God bless the child who's got his own.
That's right.
So it's kind of like still one of those things that in order to add value, sometimes you have to go and get it. Now, you had another picture here, and I thought, like, wow, as I look at a lot of your work. Now, for those people who have not been out to one of your showings, one of the things, now, what does this picture say? I'm going to just ask you that first.
I think this picture is saying that, you know, we're all in this together. And, you know, at one point in time, you could sit back and say, well, this integration thing was a great idea. And then you look at how long that we've been into that situation, and then we can say, well, has it really benefited us? Or did we fall down and did we get lax in the situation, and were we really learning, or were we better off in the segregated environment where we were teaching our own? And I think at that segregated situation, there was a more of a opportunity for minorities to be in their own businesses. All of that stuff was going on. When the integration came in, there were opportunities that we could learn more from the total in terms of the opportunities there, because the world is an inclusive, it's not segregated. So we have to be able to deal with others regardless of who we are. So, you know, it could go both ways, you know, but it's just like, well, what would you like to live in? Would you like to live your life in the daylight, or would you like to live your life at night? No, you want to be able to go both ways. You want to be able to get some of the daylight and some of the night. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like the yin and yang.
Yes, right.
Because it's in order to appreciate the daylight, you have to have the darkness.
That's exactly.
In order for you to appreciate the darkness, you have to have daylight. So it balances itself out right there. And as human beings, we have to look at how can we balance and how we can benefit the human race. Now, I'm just kind of bouncing,
but that's good.
So much,
that's good.
So much stuff.
You have to be able to try to figure it out, because it's imperative that we are trying to solve the problems, and they're major, and you can't take it lightly. So, you know, with the hoopla, there's going to be some tragedies. There's going to be some sad times. It's going to be sacrifices, and there's going to be rewards, and they go, you know, you can't have one without the other, because that's life.
Exactly. And they say, and that's all part of growth also.
But that 1% got more than what they need. I know that.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not a good
thing. But let's go to this next picture right here. And tell us about this picture. What story does this?
This story right here kind of depicts my childhood and growing up. There were 5 kids in the family, and when you look at this picture, you see an obvious 4, but there's 5 kids, and that was kind of like the little trick I kind of like put in there and let you have to look for it. Yeah. But you have to look, and you'll find it. But one of the things was, when you don't have a lot, you have to be creative, and we got creative, and we went and did our thing on the railroad track, which was a very dangerous place to be playing, because the train did come down that track, and there were kids that lost their legs and wanted to hop the train and fell off of it, just like that train still coming through our neighborhood now, but it's coming in a different form, and people want to get on that train, and they may find out that train doesn't slow down, and it's going to take you somewhere else, and when it does decide to get off, you might not be the same person that when you got on.
Oh yeah.
And it's a devastation thing. So life will take you for a ride that you have to be aware of, because you will not. The train does not stop at every stop.
Right.
You go to one of those big cities, you get on a train, you on an express train, it's going to take you several miles of 10 to 20 blocks out the way. You better know what train you're getting on.
Okay. And that's the amazing thing about being in a city also, is that no matter where I've been, as far as when I'm close to a metropolitan city, you always hear the train at night.
That's right.
For some reason. When you hear silence at night, you're probably in a remote jungle.
Very remote.
But usually, when you're close to people, a metropolitan place, you can hear the train.
And when it blows that whistle,
somewhere.
You're going to say the train is passing. Man, sometimes you could be laying in bed and you just resting, and then all of a sudden you hear that train whistle blow.
Uh-huh.
It just does something to you.
Right. Sometimes I've been at that point in my life where either I wish I was on it.
That's right.
Or that, hey, it went past,
Mm-hmm.
But, as I was alluding to earlier, and that is for those of you who have not had an opportunity to go to one of your showings, that they haven't seen the real life. These pictures right now that we're showing and we're popping up far as on the screen right now is nothing compared to seeing this in person in the life.
Yeah, you have to experience it. You have to experience art. Art is, you have to live it, and that way you have to feel it and say like, hey, it's one thing to hear a CD of your artist, it's another thing to be there and watch them perform. It's a life-changing experience. And that's what art is. It has to be a part of you. When a piece of art, when you gaze upon an actual work of art, it emotionally, it will touch you. Now, you may like it and you may not like it, but if you stand in front of a piece of art, it's just like you're coming into, the two of you are coming into each other's space. And it becomes an attachment. And you may feel something unusual and you may not feel anything at all. But when you are able to connect with a piece of art, that's when you decide, oh, I'd like to have that. And that's what drives a person to purchase. And then it might be, well, I don't care how much it costs, I want that. And if you're able, it's not about the price. It says, I want that because that art does something to me. It inspires me. I would like to see that when I walk out my house every day, because it gives me the energy to go forward and to keep moving. Now, not to get off the subject of that, but that's going back to the movie, Justice on Trial. Okay. It talks about these historical, iconic figures from the past coming back up to the future to testify in the court of law of the injustices that have gone on in the past that are very prevalent and alive and well in our society now, which needs to be treated. And going back to that situation with the Emmett Till thing, when you see the situation that Emmett Till, his mother said, "Is no way am I going to show my son in a covered casket." She let the casket stay open so that they could see it, the tragedy and the devastation. Ladies and gentlemen, is going on now. Okay, now I'll tell you firsthand, to see it is one thing, to experience it is another. But in my art, I don't want to sit back and show you a picture of a person hanging from a tree. I don't want to see that. I don't want to encourage that thought. That's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. No one wants to see people being abused or choked down in a public street right now, like what happened in New York City. what's happening in Dayton, Ohio, people getting shot down, what's happening in Columbine, all of these. Nobody wants to experience that over and over again. You know, and just like you flashing up here, the judge, Thurgood Marshall, these brothers have gone to the extent of trying to bring justice to the system so that we stand a chance when we go to court. But we have to stand up and fight for that right so that when we do go to court, that there may be justice. Because I'm going to tell you, what goes on outside the court has a big effect on what goes on in the court. And if we're not in the streets rallying for justice and for our rights to be heard and known, these bills is just like it's before Congress now. It's been defeated 200 times. We don't want to make it 201. We got to wake up. Everybody has to get in and make sure. As you look at the protesters in the streets all over the world, they're out in humongous numbers fighting for the rights just to be able to be equal citizens and get some consideration out from under their leadership. Come on, y'all, take a good look, and let's deal with that picture. Okay.
All right. And exactly, there's a lot of definite challenges that we are in the midst of. We are at the precipice.
That's right.
At this particular point in time. So it's, again, we can't wait for everyone else to do something. That there's a certain, the bottom line is we have to take some ownership.
That's right. That's right.
And that is, hey, you got to get out there and you got to do something, say something. You know, you may not be able to make the paintings such as you, but there is something, because everybody's given some type of talent upon coming into the world
to make a difference.
It's
Absolutely.
just finding your talent and utilizing it. Now, I'm going to kind of move over and segue into the other part of your journey, and that is you have a musical talent as well. Tell us about that. How did you get started on the musical journey?
Hey, it's like I have to go back to my parents. You know, they just put it out there, and I go back to the school systems where they offered it. And you know, it was a thing where you get to class and they said, okay, we're going to look at instruments. And well, we had instruments that we could choose from, that we could pick and say, okay, well, I want to learn how to play that. Ooh, I like the way that looks. I don't care. It's shiny or whatever, you know. Oh, that's a drum. I always wanted to be a drummer. Well, you had selection. And the good thing about it was all you had to do was pick it. At that time, if your parents were in a position, it didn't cost a fortune. It just cost a little bit. And that's where all of these musicians came about in the era that I grew up in. All of them, all these groups out of Dayton, Ohio. I don't have to tell you because a lot of you know. But we can go with Heat Wave, Slave, the group Dayton, Phazo, Ohio Players, Sun, and it goes on and on. Shirley Murdoch, Roger, Zapp. And just not, that's in our immediate area. And there's a ton of artists that did not have an opportunity to record that was just as good as them, just as many of them. And just on the outskirts of town, you go down to Cincinnati, you got all the Parliament Funkadelics, and you go on down to Bootsy and all. It's just so many. Go to your north, you got Howard Hewitt, and you just got so many. It's just a ton of talent. But I'm going to tell you something. We still have enough talent right now. It's going around, but it's not being developed. It's not being cultivated. A lot of them are. It's just like if you don't give a plant enough nourishment and water and light and stuff, they start to dwindle up and they shrink up and they start to die. And that's what's happening with a lot of the gifted and talented. Not only musicians and artists, we talking about writers, poets, directors, doctors, lawyers, and just some good people that can bring about change. You know, there are people out here that have been overlooked so much in society. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves. Some of these students are mentally handicapped and challenged have been looked over in our society so much. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves, because you may find out that a lot of people that appear to be normal have issues, have mental issues, and they need help. And the ones that may appear that obviously may have issues are maybe more stable than some of the ones that don't look like it. So our society has fallen down in terms of even trying to address those concerns. It's a shame. It's a shame. You know, that's how I look at it, because I look at the big picture for what it is. Because when I was growing up, when I was a child, despite of my parents, you know, I was engulfed with my art and my music. I didn't want to pay attention when the teacher was teaching. I'm just like the kids right now, so I know what some of them, they look, I don't care what that teacher teaches. I'm telling them, well, I'm going to tell you right now, you better get that lesson. Yeah. If you have the ability, you better get that lesson. And if you're having problems getting that lesson, you need to get some help. Get you some tutoring classes and take them serious, because you're going to need the ability to be able to solve problems. The key to this success that you're going to encounter in this life is going to be your ability to solve problems. Problem solving skills is probably going to be one of your biggest attributes and talents that you're going to develop. And anything that you could develop along that with your basic reading and writing is going to be your problem solving skills. Your math and your science, all that is going to be encompassing, but your ability to solve problems is going to be one of your biggest keys to be able to move through this life that we're in.
That is true, because that is one of the biggest things. That's a high in demand position, is for a problem solver. As a job coach, that was one of the things that I often and told to clients, and that is anybody can come up with a problem while things are not working right and bring it up. But what's going to make you invaluable is how you are able to solve those problems, or you're able to point them in the direction for us of solving them.
That's right.
And let me ask, because our time is beginning to kind of wind up here, and first of all, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and far as coming and participating far as in this program. Now, where can people go out and catch some of your work?
If I can say, they can always go to my website, which is www.infiniteconceptsllc.com.
Okay.
And I try to be perfectly honest. The website gives you a good idea of who I am, samples of my work and what I've done. But I'm guilty because I don't keep it up as I should, because that's a whole nother part of my brain and technology. You got this stuff. You can't stay up with everything, but in the very near future, I hope to be able to keep people more posted in terms of where I'm showing. I got a show coming up in March in Washington, D.C. I got a big tour that's coming up, probably starting in May or June, dealing with a new racing series that we're introducing, opposing NASCAR. It's called American Standard Motorsports. And you could probably go up to that website, americanstandardmotorsports.com, and kind of look under three-day weekend events or something like that, and you'll see all the things that we're going to be doing on that. And it's going to be massive, 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 and it's going to be historical and life-changing. It's going to present a lot of opportunities for those who have been loving the things that we do, because, you know, we're consumers. We love our cars, and we love our motorcycles. We love our go-karts. We love our food. We love our basketball. We love our sports. All of this is going to be, it's going to be like a big carnival environment type situation with all the things that we love, that we, you might say, that we put our good hard-earned money in and our energy and our passion in. So, and able to pull that stuff out, American Standard Motorsports, we're going to bring it to your doorstep, and it's going to be in all those major tracks around the country that you might say NASCAR uses, but they don't own the tracks, they rent them. So we're going to be leasing those tracks, and we're going to be racing, and we're going to have a party and a very economical, stimulating awakening in terms of who we are, and going to generate a lot of opportunities for us to get in there. And it's going to be a multicultural thing, but it's predominantly owned by African American, and it's an alternative to NASCAR. So I want to let you know, keep your eyes and ears open for American Standard Motorsports.
All right, and they can go to your website.
And you could go to my website also, which is infiniteconceptsllc.com.
All right. Well, Mr. Harmon, Mr. Reginald Harmon, it's been a pleasure as always, sir, for us to sit and talk with you.
Thank you so very much.
To absorb that infinite amount of knowledge that you have right there, sir.
Thank you, Father. I can only give the praises to the Creator for the gifts and the opportunities that He has brought forth in my life that I could share with you. So
okay. And I'm quite sure that your journey, and are you doing any mentoring?
All the time. I love to do more. I'm looking to get into the public schools and start doing some things right now with some friends of mine that have some serious concerns that it's just not enough male representation to mentor our youth. So I told her I'll definitely be a part of that as well.
Okay, so if anyone out there who wants to get in touch with you, go to your website.
That's right.
All right.
Once again, www.infiniteconceptsllc.com.
Okay. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us. Now, as always, when you are writing the story of your life, remember, be sure that you're holding the pen. Until the next time, we want to hear your story.